Welcome. This is the Midlife Rising podcast. This was one of the most frustrating perimenopause symptoms I had when I was in my early 40s. I would read the same paragraph 3 times before it finally sunk in, lose my train of thought when I was speaking or in a meeting. It was so embarrassing. Or even just walking into a room and forgetting what I came for. Have you noticed, is this happening to you more often lately? And if you're like me, you might think you're just stressed out or tired, or this is just aging. But there is another very real physiological reason why this is happening and why it's making your to-do list longer. And no matter how many extra hours you work, you can't get to the end of it. We are going to dig into this in this episode. And by the end, you are going to see how to fix it, how the very thing that you're doing to catch up is the thing that's making it worse. And you will get our 3 biggest tips to multiply your productivity. Let's begin. You're a woman over 40 who spent your life being the one who holds it all together. But now your body's changing and your soul is done pretending everything is fine. Welcome to Midlife Rising. We're your hosts, Sherry and Jen, twin sisters and modern medicine women, here to help you rewire your stress response, balance your hormones, and reclaim your feminine power. Every episode is a rebellion against the rules you never agreed to and a return to yourself. Join us where midlife isn't a crisis, it's a catalyst. Okay, I'm kind of excited about this episode because this is something that I'm struggling with right now. And a lot of my other symptoms, Jen, have really I've really been able to alleviate most of my symptoms of perimenopause, menopause, but this is one that kind of keeps hanging on. And it's interesting or serendipitous because literally like before we hit record, I was listening to another podcast with Dr. Mindy Pelz and Stacey London. And Stacey London was talking about this very thing, about getting on stage and suddenly losing your train of thought. Oh, how awful.
Well, you know what? She said that it wasn't, I think she was describing somebody else who this had happened to. And that person said, I forget the exact words, but like, I'm having a meno moment. Like, pause for the meno and let me remember what I wanted to say. And I think we do sort of chalk this up to I'm just getting older. My memory's not as good, or I don't know. I find the other thing is I can't find the words I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That's another related thing. I think you've had similar experience, and you were telling me that this also led to you overworking and overcompensating.
Mm-hmm.
So we all know what we feel. What do we do to try to fix it?
I actually want to take a step back because not all women actually know what they feel.
Okay.
Because I kept hearing this word brain fog when I was in my 40s. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't really know what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
And you just sort of described it here, but I thought I was just unproductive because at the time I was writing my thesis for my PhD. And PhD work is like, it requires so much cognitive power. You are reading academic papers constantly and then trying to put your thought, like summarize thousands and thousands of papers into one thought. And I thought that first of all, I thought I was a slow reader.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, me too.
And I was really embarrassed about it because my supervisor was like, you should be reading at least 5 articles a day. And these are not magazine articles. For anyone who hasn't done postgrad work, they're not magazine articles. They are 23-page, very dry, academically written research papers. So I thought I was a slow reader and I felt really ashamed about it. And I thought I was tired because I wasn't getting a very good sleep at the time. So I'm like, I'm just tired. So I'd be reading sentences 3 times before it would sink in. I was reading and I was getting things done very slowly.
Do you know what else I just thought of that I was chalking it up to? Was the distraction culture.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I thought this is happening because I'm distracted all the time with all of the different points of stimulation. Like, just on your phone alone is like multiple notifications going off all the time. And even if you put it on Do Not Disturb, there's so many opportunities to get distracted. Part of me was sort of like, okay, this is just because this is our now culture. Like, I can't focus on anything because there's all these distractions.
Definitely. I felt that too. And I also thought it was boredom.
When you read a sentence 3 times, you're like, I must not be interested in this sentence or this book, whatever you're reading.
Yeah. I'm not interested. Like this, what I'm doing is boring right now and I'm tired and I don't want to read it. And I also, at the same time, because I want to just talk about all these like symptoms, and that sometimes it's hard to pinpoint them because there are lots of women out there who don't realize that these are actual symptoms that they could do something about.
Yeah.
The other thing I didn't realize at the time was the memory loss. Like all these women who are my age are talking about the memory loss. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not like, I haven't had that until I started to see a little bit of, oh, I'm forgetting people's names. And I used to be really good with names and faces.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to have to search for someone's name. And then the other day I was standing with a whole bunch of moms and they're talking about this kid's birthday's coming up. And Leia was invited to the party. And they're like, Nyla's turning 1 soon. I was like, they said she's already walking. And I was like, how did that happen so fast? Like, how is she 8 months already? And they're like, she's not 8 months, she's a year. And I went, oh, okay. And they said, Jen, you're invited to the party. And I went, oh crap. Right. Leia and I are invited to the birthday party for this 1-year-old. And I've forgotten that I got an invitation. And I went, right. And then I did something else too. What did I say after that? It was so embarrassing. And they're all looking at me like, what is your problem? Because then the other thing I did, I was like, oh, we're invited to the party. And they're like, yes, it's next weekend. And I was like, oh my God, I have plans next weekend. I have to go change those. And the whole thing just kept getting more ridiculous and more ridiculous. And they're all staring at me because I'm older than all these moms, right? Like none of them have even hit 40 yet.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all going like, what is wrong with you and your brain? And it was only then that I started to go, oh, okay, I'm getting the memory loss too.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Like Jen, this is what I did one time. Oh my gosh. I had a virtual retreat planned for a Saturday morning at 11.
With your clients?
With my clients. And it was at 11 o'clock in the morning. And I had the emails already scheduled to go out, like to remind them to show up. And I had prepared for it, like just the day before. And then that morning came and I had this other thing that I was applying for. And there was kind of a test that I was doing. And so at 9 o'clock, I was like, all right, I'm going to spend my morning doing this test. And I turned all my notifications off. I'm like, I need to focus. I just need to get this done. Turned all my notifications off. I saw a couple of them come up on like Instagram. And I'm like, oh, these are from my clients. And I ignored them.
Oh no.
And so at 12 o'clock, when I finished, I go to my phone and I'm like, oh my God, I've completely missed the entire retreat. Everyone's trying to get into the Zoom and couldn't get into the Zoom. And I just had this complete.
How embarrassing.
I actually had a moment where I thought I am going crazy because I had spent a lot of energy on this thing and I had thought about it the night before. I think I'd even thought about it that morning when I first woke up at like 6:30 in the morning or whatever time it was. And then completely had a gap. My clients forgave me, thankfully, and we rescheduled and we did it another day. But it was like a moment, and this is the part that I want our listeners to get. It feels like you're going crazy because this doesn't happen. Like, you don't forget an entire retreat with your clients. Like, how does that happen? And I thought to myself afterwards, like, what the heck? But that is exactly what you're talking about. It's the brain fog. It's the memory loss. It's menopause.
Yeah. It's so important to talk about this stuff before we get into the reasons why, because so many women say to me that they feel like they're going crazy in perimenopause. In fact, one of our mutual friends yesterday said it to me. She's like, I thought I was going crazy. And when I finally sat in my naturopath's office and she said that it was normal, I started crying.
Because you're validated.
That's what she said to me. And because you feel validated, finally it's like, oh, I'm not alone. This is normal. And someone hears me. So to our listener, we hear you. We feel you. We've been there and you are not alone. Okay. So Cher, can I talk next about like we've talked about kind of what it is and like it's forgetting appointments, it's forgetting all this stuff, wondering why you walked into the room, sometimes forgetting to turn the water off in the sink.
Oh, yeah.
Can I talk next about what in our brain is causing this? Because I found this so fascinating.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so I learned this from a neuroscientist. Her name's Dr. Lisa Mosconi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but she wrote a book called The Menopause Brain.
Ooh, I need to read this.
What I've learned is these two things. The first is that estrogen is like a master regulator. It regulates all sorts of things in our body, and there are receptors in our brains that when we receive the estrogen to the receptors, then it tells our body to do something. And when estrogen levels decline, a critical energy source is gone.
Oh.
So it's like our perimenopause brains are tired.
Well, that's how it feels.
Yeah, it is. It's tired, which is one of the reasons why we need more sleep in menopause. Like you might need 10 hours of sleep as you're going through menopause, the same way that teenagers need, 10, 12 hours of sleep as they're going through puberty.
Yeah, I talk about that all the time. And then we get less sleep.
Your body and your brain are going through significant changes. And the next part, which is even more fascinating to me, is that menopause is actually a neurological transition that impacts the brain's structure, connectivity, and metabolic profile.
That's interesting. Okay, so what do all those mean?
What it means is that the neural pathways and the actual structure of your brain is changing during menopause. I'm almost imagining it like a set of highways. Like they were at our highway on-ramp around here in Niagara. They redid it, the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
Recently. And it took a couple of years to do it. And they changed everything, like the way that you got on, the way you got off. Now suddenly there's all these new traffic lights and new circles that you have to go around, and all this stuff has happened. And it took 3 years for that to happen. And now we're all trying to get used to this new way, and it feels all awkward. And if like you never quite know where to go, you're always kind of hesitant, and your brain actually wants to go the old way because we thought, like my car actually wants to go the old way. So because I was so used to the way that I got on the highway and the road I took and the path I took, and now that's all changed.
Yeah.
And it's confusing everybody.
That is a great analogy. Yeah, I have been on that very part of the highway, and I have felt exactly that. I'm like, what? This is supposed to go that way, and this is backwards now. This is reversed, and so now where do I go? And it's awkward, and it feels a bit scary, like a bit like I feel like I'm going the wrong way.
Yeah, you feel like you're gonna miss your turn, and there's 2 ways to get to the same point that I need to go now. So this is essentially the way that I picture what is going on in our brain during perimenopause. So if that's what's happening, and that was not just changing the path, like they rebuilt concrete structures for this to happen. So of course, we're going to have some memory loss. We're going to forget things. Our brain's going to feel foggy because there's so much friggin' stuff going on up there.
Yeah. And exhausted. Like that's a lot of brain power, a lot of stuff. Like that's going to take up a lot of energy.
Exactly. So the good news, it is not an aging thing.
It's a menopause thing.
It's a menopause thing and it's a transitional thing.
That is good news.
It subsides after the process is complete. I mean, our brains continue to change throughout our entire life. That's called neuroplasticity. But this process, like the worst of it, gets better. Now, a little note of qualification. If you, our listener, feel this in a very intense, sudden way, and it doesn't subside after a couple of years, talk to your doctor about it, because that could be a symptom of something else.
Jen, can we go back to something I was just thinking about within that analogy, and how as I was going through this whole new entry and exit to the highway, that part about it sort of feeling scary and feeling hesitant and am I going the right way? That translates to confidence, right? Like you lose confidence. Like when all of that feels kind of shaky, then you're also not going to show up to your business or to your work or whatever you do in the same way as you used to, right?
Totally. You lose confidence in yourself and trust in yourself and in your capabilities.
Yeah.
Literally, like the foundation underneath you feels shaky.
That makes so much sense. So what's the, I know you've probably done some research on this too, like how this shows up at work for high performers. Most of the women listening to this are high performers. They're achievers. They're successful women. What's the research show?
There's a bunch of different things that happen. So in the way that we operate, we still try to live up to, even if you're not a high performer, you're still trying to live up to the role that you were in and the identity that you had as in your work, let's say.
Right.
So I was known as the go-to person, and head into perimenopause and you might not be able to live up to that identity anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or, the person that never missed a detail.
Yep.
And now suddenly you're missing details and people are like, and you start to wonder, like, are people noticing this? Are they judging me? Am I now going to be passed up for a promotion?
Mm-hmm. There's the confidence thing.
It affects your confidence. It affects how you operate. So 57% of women, at least in a couple of studies that I wrote thereabouts, perceive that they have a reduction in productivity. So whether it's real or not, we're not sure. But women who are going through this are perceiving that they're not as productive as they used to be. They're not as sharp. They don't feel like they're getting as much done.
And real or perceived doesn't really matter, right?
No. Because, and then they also, in conjunction with that, have concerns about being perceived as less capable. So they're perceiving their own lower productivity and then getting nervous about being perceived as less capable by other people. And that's about 50% of women feel like they're being perceived as less capable. So then what do? You start working harder to make up for it. That's what I did. I was in my PhD. I worked longer. I worked harder to try to make up for this embarrassing loss of productivity. For me, it was shameful. Loss of productivity. And the problem with that is that your stress levels are higher, right? Because you feel like you have less confidence. Everything's changing. You don't trust yourself anymore. You're feeling stressed because now you're feeling like, oh my goodness, people are going to see this. They're going to pass me up for a promotion, or they're going to judge me, or I'm going to do something embarrassing in a meeting, and I'm talking about work because that's where my research is, but this can happen in any situation. Like you can do something embarrassing in your social circles. You can forget your kid. You're supposed to pick them up at gymnastics or something. Like all these things can happen and you start to feel more stressed that you're going to forget stuff. So you create this to-do list that keeps getting longer and more overwhelming, and you get more stressed and you work harder. And that, we know, makes it worse, because when you're stressed, you don't think straight. Your brain gets foggy when you're stressed. So now it's a vicious cycle. You work harder, you're overcompensating for what you perceive as you not being sharp, whether it's at home or at work. And then you get more stressed and you can't think straight even less.
Well, and you know what? I'm just thinking about how that shows up at home. And I was thinking about this, like just recently, getting ready for, we've entertained a few times over the last few weeks. And I keep looking at the way that I'm getting ready to entertain, like getting food ready and getting the house ready. And I'm so frazzled about it. And I look at myself afterwards and go like, why did it take me 2 hours to get those 2 appetizers ready? And I feel so much less efficient at home as well as at work. Like, yeah, I've been looking at how much I get done during the day. And this may or may not be true, but it's perceived that I'm getting less done, taking me longer to do things. And then at home, it's the same. Takes me longer to I feel like I'm kind of all over the place, even if I'm not.
So, Cher, I have a perfect example of that for anyone that might be thinking like it doesn't show up at home, it's purely at work. So this is what happens to me. I've noticed this recently. So when I am stressed in the morning, because we're in a rush, like if I wake up later than normal or something happens that I'm late and I'm trying to get Leia off to school, so much has to happen in the morning, right? Especially now that I'm doing it solo.
No, it's simple.
And I can't seem to get it together to do anything the night before. So I am trying to make her breakfast and she always wants eggs and bacon. And I do it because I don't want her to eat sugary cereal or like they're all sugary. I want her to start her day with protein. So I do it. So it's like breakfast, making lunches, getting her dressed, getting her hair done, all this stuff. And what happens when I'm stressed is I start to I'll pull the eggs out of the fridge and then I'm like, okay, I got to get her lunch ready. So I'm like, okay, maybe I can be more efficient. This is all going on in the back of my mind. What can I pull out for her lunch at the same time as I'm in the fridge? And then can I cook her lunch and breakfast at the same time? So I'll start the oven and maybe put, I don't know, chicken fingers in the oven and then try to get the eggs going. And by the end of it, I'm doing so many things at once because I'm hurrying that the eggs are getting burnt, I'm spilling stuff.
Yeah, and it takes longer.
Can't find my phone. And then she's not ready. And then I forget her water bottle and we're rushing out the door and it's crazy. And it feels it takes longer. And it's all just because of this, I'm trying to do multiple things at once and multitasking is impossible if you're in a stressed state. And that's what
and I would actually argue this is a whole nother topic, but multitasking in general, our brains can't actually do it.
They can't. And I learned that from a neuroscientist too. But yeah, we'll talk about that in another episode. So the stress that you feel just makes it worse. That's the way to think about it. And I'm sure every mom has been in that state if they have children. And you know what? It doesn't matter if you have children or not. When you're rushing around, that's what happens.
Yeah, that happens to me all the time, especially when I'm trying to get out the door. It seems to be when I'm trying to get out the door that I'm, especially if I don't know, this is probably going to happen tomorrow. We're going to a family reunion or whatever, and I need to make something. And I'm, if I know we're going to be gone for a night, then I'm like, okay, I got to turn off the lights and I got to water the plants. I got to do all these things. And this is the definition of overwhelming. You're trying to do all these things and then none of it gets done well. And that's when you spill things, or it's when you have to do the extra things like cleaning up something from the floor or whatever, because you're rushing around. It makes more work. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And at work, you're cutting corners and that makes more work because then you haven't solved the problem perfectly and you end up solving another problem in firefighting. And
you and I both know that this is not the only part of the story. So what else is causing this?
Yeah, of course, we have to dig into this because that's what this podcast is all about, is the conditioning, the patriarchy, the narratives that make it worse. So let's talk about the workplace narratives that are subliminal and that exacerbate this feeling. So starting point, there's this concept of the ideal worker bodies. So the ideal worker in today's business world is like a man. They're rational, intellectual. Now, not that women aren't, but it's like the stereotypical view of men's bodies. Rational, intellectual, self-contained, strong, aggressive when necessary, and without extra burdens, like external burdens like children. That's the ideal worker in many workplaces today. And I will say like physically strong too, like especially even in like healthcare, and strong emotionally. So both ways. So that's the ideal worker. And this is just a norm that we have, at least in Western society.
What's coming to mind for me is even just in the way that they dress and the way that men used to dress. Like for me, I used to work in the financial industry and the men were always in these suits. And so I would show up like really put together and wearing like not a flowy dress, a suit that was cut and tailored and, you know what I mean? Like,
yep. And black or navy, not pink or orange or red or like something, like it depends on the country you're in. Like it differs in some countries, but yeah, in Canada, it was, I'm going to show up and I'm going to look professional and I'm going to act like a man. I'm going to be logical and fact-based, and at least I'm simplifying, but that's sort of the stereotypical view.
And of course, also the dress code has changed so much. I think COVID like completely changed that too, but that's sort of the image that I have.
And that is still the norm against which women's performance at work is measured.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and that is from research in the 2020s. That is not research from the 1980s. This is still what is the norm in workplaces today. So now imagine women's bodies and just women themselves are understood as leaky.
Okay,
emotional.
Can we stop there for a second? Is that a word that they use in the research? Or is that that's not one that I hear a lot of women say. Like, I feel like I'm leaky, but
no, it's the way that they are trying to show that women's bodies are seen as negative in the workplace because we have periods. We think about all the things in menopause, the way that our bodies, quote unquote, leak.
Yeah. Sweat, tears, periods, discharge, even, okay, maybe too much information, but discharge, yeast infections.
All the stuff that women's body, we get flushed in pregnancy, breasts.
Yes, leaking breasts. There's the word leaky.
Yeah. A friend of mine told me about this story, but her breasts were leaking at work. And she was like, oh my God, I have to go home immediately. So that is, yes, it's an academic term, but I love that term because it just shows how women's bodies are unacceptable.
Yeah.
Or it's a good way to portray that idea that women's bodies are unacceptable. And we as women are emotional, we're hormonal and unreliable. And then physically weak. And finally, we've talked about this before, under the power of our reproductive capacity.
What do you mean by that?
We are our reproductive capabilities are what control us. We're controlled by hormones, our emotions, our ability to get pregnant, our sexuality.
Yep.
And think about it, like women are liked when they're young and youthful and beautiful. So all of these things make us unsuited to the workplace and more suited to the home, as defined by patriarchy. So then in the workplace, we feel like we're kind of othered, like we're sort of set aside. So then we need to prove ourselves, manage our bodies, like make sure our bodies are disciplined at work, push through the symptoms. Even if you're having period pain, like this goes for women who aren't even in menopause yet or whatever, like push through the period pain. Like mold your body until it fits the mold. And that is stressful. And it also all of this makes us feel like we have to prove our value in the workplace and often in life.
Yeah, I can so relate to that. It's very subconscious or unconscious. You know, I never realized I was doing this until we started talking about it, and I started researching it myself, and you know, going on my own journey of understanding the patriarchal influences on us. And now that I look back on especially my corporate life, I can really see how I was living within that and constantly trying to prove my value, trying to prove that I deserved a seat at the table, trying to gain respect without having to like do, you know, a man walks in the room and they immediately get respect, or like a new hire, new man starts in a role and he automatically gets respect. A woman starts in a new role and she has to earn it. So there's like double standards.
Sure, that may not always be true, but at least it often feels that way.
Yeah.
For many women. I just wanted to put that qualifier in.
There's lots of women who I am sure walk into the workplace and do get automatic respect or don't feel imposter syndrome, which is really kind of what that is. Not, you know, feeling like you have to prove your value.
Yeah.
If our listeners are feeling some of these things, what can they start doing about it?
Okay, I've got 3 things. And I'm going to start with the thing that is the easiest. And then the third step is going to be like, actually, how do we address this patriarchy? Like this conditioning. So first step is a really simple thing. And that is to continue to try new things, learn new things, get out and socialize, because that's always something new and changes of scenery. Do the brain work, even if it's like puzzles, because that allows your brain to continue to create these new pathways and to adjust to it. So when I talked about how the brain is flexible and we have natural neuroplasticity to help it to be more plastic and adjust to this new structure and this new highway, continue to use it.
That makes sense.
Another thing you can do is also very simple. Take omega-3 and 6, which is the easiest way to get that is by taking a fish oil every day. That helps. It's just a supplement that helps your brain. You know more about this than me, Cher, as the nutritionist. Helps your brain to adjust to new neural pathways.
Yeah. And there's, oh my gosh, I can think of so many more and things that have helped. Well, we'll have to save that for another day or for the midlife red tent.
Yeah. Well, so talking about the midlife red tent. So the third thing is to release this conditioning that tells you internally, like if you, our listener, have internalized any of these beliefs that I've got to prove my worth or my value, I've got to prove my value at work. I've got to prove my value as a mother or as a good wife, or
in other words, you're always striving to be good enough.
Yeah. And that causes you to work harder and not be able to slow down without feeling guilty, without fearing dropping the ball. So releasing the subconscious patterns and the limiting beliefs that are driving you to work harder and like stay busy proving your value. That's going to be the biggest thing. That's going to help you get over the brain fog. Like slowing down is what you've got to do. That's step 3. But the only way you're going to slow down is by releasing these subconscious patterns.
And that's easier said than done.
I know.
It's not just like, you can't just tell yourself, okay, I'm going to stop believing that.
Exactly. Because 90% of our behavior is automatic, driven by these subconscious patterns. So we don't even realize often what those subconscious patterns are. We're unaware of them. We learn them in childhood. They're coping mechanisms, and they just get ingrained in ourselves as beliefs.
Yeah.
And that's where we operate from. So we can't expect to be able to slow down and change our behavior unless we release those subconscious patterns. And that's what we do in the Midlife Red Tent, along with all the body things, more supplement ideas, more tailored to what each person is going through. So the Midlife Red Tent is our program for women over 40 who want to get out of the symptoms, stop the brain fog, and who are ready to release those subconscious patterns that are keeping them so busy and exhausted so you can thrive and rise.
That's the missing piece that I see out there. It's like, yeah, we're going to do there's all the physiological stuff, which is what most people are talking about. But if you don't release the subconscious patterns, all the physiological stuff isn't going to work. Or at least it's not going to work as well or 100%. So I know that it is hard to slow down because of that need to maintain your reputation, your brand, as one of our clients said the other day, your reputation at work or even as a mom or as a friend, the friend who's always there. It's hard to slow down. And that is why in the next episode, we're going to talk about how to set healthy boundaries as midlife women without feeling guilty or selfish. And that's going to allow you to slow down, reduce your stress, and in turn, the brain fog. We're going to cover why it's so hard to set boundaries without guilt in the first place and how to release that guilt so that you can actually slow down. So come back for that in the next episode, and we will see you then.
And don't forget, if you like this episode, talk about it with your friends, share it with them, and just go down to the 5 stars that are beneath the title and give us a 5-star rating. That helps us get our message out there. We're so grateful for that.